Thank you so much for welcoming me here today. As Paul mentioned, when he found out that Brian had completed suicide, he felt angry. He felt maybe sad, maybe scared, maybe confused as to why this happened. And all of those feelings are completely normal. My condolences for any of you that were affected or impacted by either Brian's suicide or any of the other people who either volunteered, worked for your company, or those of you in your personal lives. My name's Kimberly Curnan, as Paul said. I am the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline Manager at 211 Tampa Bay Cares. I've been doing this for 11 years as of Monday. I started off at 211 answering the phone calls from people who were suicidal and having those discussions with them, working through their coping strategies, and then trying to get them connected to services, or if it was an immediate danger, local law enforcement. As the years went on, I moved up to supervisors, and now I manage the Suicide Crisis Line Department. We cover 10 counties in the central west portion of Florida, and we talk to everybody. What we're gonna learn today is that suicide is not, you're not immune. Nobody is immune from the thoughts of suicide, okay? I always share this little story when I present to people. Me, I'm terrified of death, okay? So I've never in my life been suicidal. But as we talk today and as we start to have a dialogue about what some causes of suicide are, we will realize that those of us who have never been suicidal is because there has not been an event yet that we have the inability to cope with. And all of us are at risk of getting ourselves into a situation where an event happens that we do not have those coping strategies. And we could fall into suicidal thoughts or ideations. So first we want to talk about recognizing our own judgments, okay? I put a list of things here that people have said in the past in terms of their attitudes and judgments about suicide. The first one, lots of people out there say suicide is wrong. I'm not going to tell you if you believe that you're right or you are wrong. That is your belief. That is the environment that you grew up with. That's the culture maybe you grew up in. But there's a lot of people out there who say suicide is wrong. Then conversely, there's a lot of people who say, no, it's somebody's right to die by suicide. If they feel that they just can't handle it anymore for whatever reason, and they want to take their own life and have control over that, other groups of people say, no, it's everybody's right to die by suicide. Then we've got some people in different environments that say, I would feel ashamed if one of my loved ones took their own life. I wouldn't want to talk about it. I wouldn't want to bring that spotlight to me or my family. And we have a large population of people who still feel that shame that there's something they failed at in that relationship. Whether it's a working relationship, a family relationship, whatever it may be, there's a lot of shame that still surrounds a suicidal death. I think you guys are super lucky that Brian's wife was so open to sharing this information, because what that does, as Paul said, is that it opens the door to have a safe space and a dialogue to talk about this. There's a lot of people out there that just don't want to be bothered. You know, I'm not a professional, so if somebody says they're suicidal, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can say. And during this conversation that we have today, you will see that nothing could be farther from the truth. Nobody has to be a professional. When I started at 211 11 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing. Okay, I went through a little bit of training, got thrown on the phones, jumped in head first, and throughout the years, you learn that it's really just about having that rapport back and forth with somebody who is trying to share their feelings. Some people say everyone has a reason for living. We're going to talk about this a little more in detail as well, that, if you have kids, the misconception is if you have kids, then of course you shouldn't want to die by suicide, because why would you leave your family behind? If you have a spouse, if you have parents, loved ones, whatever it may be, then you have something to live for. Why would you want to die by suicide? We're going to talk about those misconceptions as well. Also, people think that if they're serious about suicide, then there's nothing you can do to help them try to change their mind to make that decision or detract them from that plan that they already have in place. Again, nothing can be farther from the truth. And this final point here, like I said earlier, any of us could be at risk of suicide. So I told you earlier, I'm terrified of death. I'm one of those people, I want to live forever if I could, all right? And because I just don't know what's on the other side. I have no idea. I really admire those of you that have that strong faith, that know where you're going after we die. It scares me, okay? So I've never come into an event where I've crossed over to that thought process of being suicidal. But that's because there hasn't been an event to trigger that in me. I've been able to have the coping strategies to not go over into the river, into the ocean of suicidal thoughts. But I'm a single mom of a little 9-year-old boy. And it's been me and him for his entire life since the day I found out he was coming. And if something happened to him, I can't tell you I would have the strategy and the coping skills to be able to move forward. So just knowing what those things could be that happens in your life and being cognizant that if an event happens that you've never dealt with, think of the worst thing in the world that could happen to you. Then we start to think about, would that push me into suicidal thoughts and ideations? So let's talk about the myths. So the first myth that a lot of people believe is that confronting a person with suicide will only make them angry and increase their risk. They're gonna get defensive, they're gonna get upset that you would even suggest it, and they're gonna wanna kill themselves even more. When in reality, the truth is, opening the lines of communication and letting somebody know who's going through that mental health crisis that you can talk to me, I won't judge you, I won't belittle you because of the thoughts that you're feeling, opens up that door to allow them to communicate. The more somebody can talk and feel comfortable talking about their thoughts of suicide or any mental health challenges they're having, the less risk they have for the future. Again, another myth is only experts can prevent suicide. I told you, I started 11 years ago not knowing what I was doing. Fresh out of college, never talked to a suicidal person in my life. And it's just not true. I go and teach people all across the Tampa Bay area how to interact with people who are suicidal. I've gone to MacDill Air Force Base and taught the SOCOM leadership over there how to work with the what's it called? The front soldiers, those infantry guys, to how to talk with the infantry guys. I taught the chaplain and the chaplain's assistant. And now we have more religious entities asking for our help because I've had Catholic churches come to me and say, okay, what we're doing isn't working. Can you please come and talk to us and our parishioners about how we interact with these people that come into our church and talk about suicide. You don't have to be a professional. And we're gonna go over some of those tips and strategies that you can use if you are ever finding yourself in a conversation with somebody who's admitting to thoughts of suicide. Suicidal people keep their plans to themselves. I can tell you, as the manager of the 988 suicide hotline, that is not true. They will tell us what their plan is, and we ask them very straightforward, do you have a plan for suicide? If they say yes, we ask them, tell me, how would you do it? And some people say they would use a gun, some people would take pills, some people jump in front of traffic, and we talk about how to detach them from those lethal means to suicide. So people will share their plan, and we'll talk about how we initiate that conversation and try to pull some of that information from someone who may approach you. Those who don't talk about it, don't do it. Incorrect. Once somebody who is suicidal gets that comfortability and that safe space to discuss their feelings and thoughts of suicide, they want to talk about it. And those who talk about it and feel comfortable sharing their experiences are at a lower risk. Doesn't mean they're at no risk. It just means they're at a lower risk of following through with suicide if they feel that support and that camaraderie from those people in their lives. And once someone has decided to die by suicide, there's nothing we can do to stop them. And again, just not true. We experience that every day on the suicide hotline. People call us, and just to give you some perspective, we get phone calls from every age group. We get phone calls, chats, and texts from children as young as 7 years old who have access to weapons and have told us that as soon as I get home from school, I'm going to use the gun and I'm going to kill myself. And then we have people all the way up into their 80s and 90s that just say, I've lived a good life, I think it's time to go. So anywhere in between those populations, all of us are at risk of running into suicidal thoughts, again, depending on the event that happens in our lives that we just can't cope with. The facts. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for American youth. And when we say youth, it's 25 and younger. Okay, so there are a lot of youth out there who do not have, for whatever reason, whatever's happened in our world lately, do not have the coping strategies to get through relationship breakups. Our top cause of suicidal thoughts in our American youth is the end of a relationship. Boyfriend left me, girlfriend left me, partner left me, whatever the situation is. They have an extremely hard time coping with relationships ending, and they jump and default straight to, I might as well just kill myself. So those numbers are increasing every day. According to the American Association of Suicidology, 30% of college students report thinking about ending their own lives each year. And I also have done presentations at the local universities here in Tampa, talking to those resident advisors and letting them know if you run into a student on campus, these are the types of strategies you should use to talk to them. And it's the same stuff we're going to discuss today. Per the World Health Organization, over 2,000 people end their own lives every day around the world, and over 800,000 people per year. Each day, over 50,000 people attempt to take their own lives around the world. And untreated depression is the single greatest contributor to the risk of death by suicide. Untreated depression is also the highest diagnosed disability in America right now. So we are impacted by not only the loss of people that we personally know, but people that are publicized in the world and the communities that we follow and really pay a lot of attention to. Diagnosis of a serious or terminal illness is also a situational clue that will trigger somebody to want to take their own life. When we do suicide trainings, we try to stay away from the terminal illness topic because that's a touchy subject. So if there's questions about the terminal illness piece of things, I'll be at the back after this. We can talk about that. But what we're going to focus on are those people who have not been diagnosed with a serious or terminal illness. Okay. And then the loss of financial security. Working at 211 Tampa Bay Cares, we normally do information, referral, and financial assistance to people in Pinellas County. Clearwater, for those of you not from this area, Clearwater, the city that we're in right now, is in Pinellas County, Florida. Our agency is the largest financial assistance provider in Pinellas County. We give about $2 million a year to the local residents to keep them housed, employed, and utilities turned on. We're normally doing that work. We've done that work for years. Then COVID hit, okay? And we were normally used to working with people who were very low income. They utilize government assistance a lot. They use us as part of their annual budget to make sure they don't become homeless for them and their families. When COVID hit, we received such an influx of calls from people in the mid to upper class making six figures or more who have never had this type of event or loss in their life. And I'm specifically talking about the loss of financial security. We've got people out there who ran their own companies, had their own businesses, restaurants, hotels, whatever it was, and they had never had to ask for help before. They lost their homes. I saw people who had paid their mortgage for 28 years and only had 2 years to go and lost their homes to foreclosure because their businesses went down. They had never had to ask for help before. They felt shame having to come to their family, having to go to their kids, having to go to their parents, asking for money, because that was just a life they were not used to. The suicide rates in Pinellas County for our mid to upper class boosted way up after COVID hit and everybody felt that financial crisis. We also have what we call behavioral clues. So things that somebody is doing behavioral-wise that may indicate they might be having thoughts of suicide. The first and the highest risk is that you've had a previous suicide attempt. So if anyone in this room or anyone that you may know that is still living in your life has attempted suicide before, they are at higher risk than the rest of us who have not. If they acquire a gun or start stockpiling pills or start giving away their possessions, saying, here, I want to give my cats, I want to give my dog, I want to make arrangements that if anything happens to me soon, somebody is going to take care of my kids. They start making arrangements and giving away possessions. Here, the family's heirlooms, the dishes that great-great-great-grandma passed down to me, I want you to have them. I think they would be better suited for you. Things that you loved in the past that you now start getting out of your life and clearing space in your life doesn't mean you're suicidal, but it means I want to have a conversation with you about that and ask you why, okay? Those people who are in recovery and have substance abuse or addiction issues, a relapse will trigger that shame, which in turn can trigger thoughts of suicide. So a lot of people that reach out to us on the 988 suicide hotline, a lot of them are talking about, I relapsed. I was sober for 5 years, something happened, I said, forget it, screw it all, and I went drinking, or I went to my dealer, bought whatever, and I used all night last night. And now I want to kill myself because I threw away all that sobriety. And then dramatic mood changes. The population seems to think that if you're suicidal, you're automatically going to be sad, okay? Or you're going to be upset, or you're going to look depressed. When in essence, it's a dramatic mood change either way. So the people that are normally happy, bubbly, talkative, interactive with their friends, coworkers, and all of a sudden they start to withdraw and they seem depressed. They won't talk to anybody anymore. They're calling off a lot, and they're just not doing their normal, bubbly, happy behavior. Yes, that's your most typical, most common. But conversely, you've got those people who typically are always in a bad mood. We've always got those at our job, right? That one person that's never in a good mood, you can never make them happy. They're always walking around grumbling. And then all of a sudden they come in to work, or you meet up with them for lunch and they're euphoric. They're happier than you've ever seen them in their lives. This dramatic mood change could indicate that they've started a plan, they've come up with a plan, and they have a date in mind, and that is control for them, and they are happy that they finally have control over something in their life. So it causes this feeling of euphoria or pink clouding. So when we think about people who are suicidal, it's not just the people who are sad. Sometimes it's this feeling of extreme happiness and euphoria that is uncharacteristic for that person. So when we talk about looking for somebody who may be having thoughts of suicide, we talk about what some clues could be. In the suicide intervention world, we call these invitations. The invitations that somebody may be putting out to let those around them know that something is not right with them. And it doesn't look the same for everybody. Everybody is different, okay? But we have the most obvious things, those direct verbal cues. So people saying, I wish I was dead, or I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to end it all, or if I don't get that promotion, if I don't get that raise, if I don't get the new job, then I'm just gonna go ahead and kill myself. Those are pretty obvious, direct verbal behavioral cues that will give you some insight and some immediate notice that this person may be having thoughts of suicide. We then have those people that do the indirect verbal cues. Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. My family would be better off without me. It'll all be over soon, so what does this even matter? Who cares if I'm gone anyway? And I'm so tired of this, I can't go on anymore, okay? I'm sure all of us in this room have had a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, and said, oh God, I just wish I wouldn't wake up tomorrow. I just wish I could sleep for the rest of my life and never wake up, because you're having a bad day. Some of us are saying that with thoughts of suicide in mind, and some of us are saying that without ever having thoughts of suicide. We're just going through a bad time. What we're gonna talk about later is what we can do and how to differentiate between those two types of populations. The people that are just saying it because they're having a bad day, and those people who may actually be thinking about suicide. We also have things that we can watch for in events that are happening to those that we know and love, and then the behavior that they exhibit when these events occur. So for your situational cues, the things that happen that could cause somebody to go into thoughts of suicide would include suddenly losing their job or the loss of a major relationship. Like I said, the kids that reach out to us, the youth 25 and younger, 9 times out of 10, they're having thoughts of suicide because their significant other broke up with them. Okay. The death of a loved one, especially if it was by suicide, will increase the risk of those of you who knew and loved them. So how do we approach somebody who is suicidal? And how do we respond to somebody who admits that they may be having thoughts of suicide? The first and easiest thing that we could ever teach you is that you have to be comfortable using the word suicide. And we have to ask clearly. And we have to trust their response, okay? So be ready to ask the question. If you see something that is very uncharacteristic of somebody that you know, love, care about, and you think they may be having thoughts of suicide, ask them the question, are you thinking of suicide? Are you thinking of killing yourself? And if you are comfortable using the word and the term suicide and you don't shy away from it, right there you open up this much comfortability with the other person if that is the case with them. Be ready to hear an uncomfortable answer. Trust me, all my staff, every time they ask on the phone, are you thinking of suicide? All of them are saying, please say no, please say no, please say no, okay? But they're all saying yes, okay? And we need to be okay with that answer, and we need to be comfortable, and we need to say, thank you for being so honest with me. And open up that space and say, tell me more. We don't want to avoid the question. If it's something that you don't feel comfortable asking, work with your company, your agency, your locations to find that person there that is comfortable. Okay, and we're gonna talk about how you designate that later on. So asking the question, we wanna be straightforward, and like I said, you wanna use the language. You wanna be comfortable using the word suicide. We don't want to say, oh, are you thinking of doing something bad? Are you thinking of doing something stupid? Are you thinking of doing something you'll regret in the future? Because all of that could be interpreted differently. Are you thinking of hurting yourself? That is different than actual suicide, and it can be interpreted differently. So we want to be comfortable using the term, are you thinking of suicide? Everybody, let's say it together. Are you thinking of suicide? If you don't like that, I give you other options here. Are you feeling suicidal? Are you thinking of killing yourself? These are very straightforward statements that use language that is clear. I'm trying to find out if you're in the thought process of ending your life. Not that you're just gonna go to bed for the next 3 days and sleep it off. Not that you're gonna go out and harm yourself. I wanna know if your intention is to die, okay? So we need to be very clear and very concise with the language that we use. And then for my phone agents that are super uncomfortable with their first few phone calls, I give them this last option. You know, sometimes the people that, sometimes when people say the things that you're saying, sometimes when people share what you're sharing, sometimes they're thinking about suicide. Is that what you're thinking about? And it kind of normalizes the behavior that you're noticing in them and lets them know that other people have thought of suicide when they've experienced this kind of event.